Good morning once again from the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov outside Moscow as our coverage continues of the return home of the 3 Expedition 50 crew members who are about to depart the International Space Station for the final time. Shane Kimbrough, the Expedition 50 commander from NASA, and Russian cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Andrei Borisenko of the Russian Federal Space Agency, Roscosmos, are strapped into the descent module at the centermost section of the 3-section Soyuz spacecraft, the Soyuz MSO-2. They are ready for the undocking of their spacecraft from the International Space Station's Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Here in the Russian Mission Control Center, we're about 25 minutes away from the issuance of a command that will begin the process of opening the hooks that have held the Soyuz spacecraft to its docking port since its arrival back on October 21st. It will take about 90 seconds for those hooks to open, after which springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another, and physical separation of the Soyuz from Poisk is scheduled at 2:57 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time, 3:57 and 30 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. As the Soyuz backs away from the Poisk module, there will be a pair of separation burns that will enable the Soyuz engines to be fired up to open up a rate that will enable the Soyuz spacecraft to depart the station and back away to a safe distance for the deorbit burn later this morning that will begin the ride home for Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko. The first of the 2 separation burns will occur at 3 a.m. Central Time. The second, about 1 minute and 50 seconds later. The first burn will be 8 seconds in duration, about a ½ meter per second opening rate for the Soyuz. The second separation burn will be a 15-second burn of about 1.5 meters of delta or change in velocity for the Soyuz as it begins to back away from the International Space Station. Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko conducted leak checks of their Soyuz launch and entry suits, the Sokol launch and entry suits that they are wearing right now. They are strapped into their respective seats in the descent module with Ryzhikov as the Soyuz commander under the call sign of Favora, which is another word for Mount Tabor, a sacred location of the Holy Land in northern Israel. Sergei Ryzhikov completing his first flight into space, flanked on his left by Andrei Borisenko, who is board engineer number 1, and Shane Kimbrough to Ryzhikov's right as board engineer number 2. This crew is wrapping up 171 days on the station, 173 days in space overall. It took them 2 days to reach the International Space Station following their launch back on October 19th last year. They will have completed 2,768 orbits of the Earth by the time they land on the steppe of Kazakhstan later this morning, which will be in the late afternoon Kazakh time. They will have traveled 73.2 million miles during their 173-day journey. A little less than 3 hours ago, Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko made their final preparations before entering the Soyuz MSO-2. They said goodbye to their counterparts, the new expedition commander, Peggy Whitson, who is in command of the International Space Station now for the 2nd time in her career, as well as her crewmates Oleg Novitsky and Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency. Let's take a quick look back about 3 hours ago at the time that the crew members said farewell to each other and closed the hatch for the final time. As you saw, the hatch first closed on the Soyuz side of the docking interface, followed just a minute later by the closure of the Poisk module hatch that you'll see just a moment or two from now, as Oleg Novitsky supervised that activity from the station side of the docking interface. That was followed by a series of leak checks over the course of the past 2 hours. We have a tight seal between the Soyuz and the International Space Station. The small vestibule that you see in this view from this tape replay from about 3 hours ago, that leak check and the vestibule then was depressurized to bring it down to vacuum in preparation for the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station. Again, the Soyuz will undock from the Poisk module back away to a safe distance from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn, a 4-minute, 38-second retrograde firing that will be a braking maneuver to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit for its descent back to the Earth's atmosphere. Its computers honed in on this remote site in south-central Kazakhstan, where the search and recovery forces and a team of NASA support personnel are now gathered in the town of Zhezkazgan for their boarding of Russian Mi-8 helicopters to fly to the southeast about 89 miles to recover the crew once they have touched down following their parachute-assisted entry back from Earth. You can see again Novitsky closing the hatch on the Poisk module side of the docking interface. We are just about 20 minutes away from the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station.
Please send command Vizir Prichal. The command is sent.
You're listening to the translation of discussion between the Russian flight controllers here in Korolyov. You're looking at a view from a balcony camera overlooking the large International Space Station flight control room here. Those flight controllers are making final systems checks with Sergei Ryzhikov, the commander of the Soyuz MSO-2, as we are now just about 18.5 minutes away from the Soyuz departure from the International Space Station. Let's take a look at the timeline that will begin with the undocking. In this animation, you'll see the undocking, the Soyuz backing away from the Poisk module of the International Space Station to a safe distance away from the complex. The deorbit burn that will begin the ride home for Soyuz will be a 4-minute, 38-second braking maneuver that will occur at 5:28 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time. That will slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second. Once it reaches the traces of the Earth's atmosphere, the modules will separate pyrotechnically. Of course, the only module that survives is the middle section, the descent module, where the crew is strapped in. Once atmospheric entry begins, temperatures around the Soyuz will build to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. That heat will be ablated by the heat shield on the Soyuz prior to the deployment of the parachutes. First, two pilot parachutes deployed, followed by the main chute. The main chute covering an area of about 1,000 meters, slowing the Soyuz to a descent rate of 7.2 meters per second. The harness is first allowing the Soyuz to descend at an angle of 30 degrees to expel heat, then shifting the Soyuz to a straight vertical descent. Soft landing engines will fire about 3 seconds before touchdown in a final braking maneuver, and the Soyuz will be home. Landing is currently scheduled at 6:21 and 5 seconds a.m. Central Time, which will be 5:21 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, about 2 hours and 34 minutes before sunset. The weather at the landing site is virtually perfect, just about no clouds in the area, just a few scattered clouds perhaps at 28,000 feet. The winds out of the southeast, about 10 knots. Temperatures at landing time will be in the mid-60s Fahrenheit. So for early April, you couldn't ask for a better day for a homecoming for a Soyuz crew. And hopefully, once the Soyuz is under its parachutes later today, we'll be able to see its descent all the way through touchdown. We'll be standing by, hopefully, to get all of that video live from the landing site. As mentioned earlier, the NASA team flew on an Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft earlier today from Karaganda, the staging city for today's landing operations, down to Zhezkazgan, where they have met up with the Russian search and recovery forces called Rosaviatsia. It's a civil aviation and rescue patrol for the Russian government. That team will be boarding a series of a dozen Mi-8 helicopters before long at the time of the deorbit burn later today to fly a short distance from Zhezkazgan down to the landing site itself. There will be two helicopters that will make their way to the southwest to the midpoint between the ballistic landing site and the nominal landing site, and two additional helicopters that will fly even further down to the area near the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the launch site for Soyuz vehicles, standing by in the unlikely event that the Soyuz would encounter a problem resulting in a shortfall of their landing target. But all eyes are on that bullseye you see, about 89 miles or so to the southeast of Zhezkazgan, where the prime search and recovery teams will be gathered. Once the Soyuz touches down, those helicopters will land in sequential fashion to begin the process of extracting the crew from the Soyuz vehicle, placing them in comfortable chairs nearby, to allow them to get their landing legs back after 6 months of weightlessness. There will be a short time for the crew in the chairs before they're carried into a nearby inflatable medical tent, that orange medical tent that you've seen on previous Soyuz landings, where they will conduct medical tests on the crew before they board a trio of helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to Karaganda, where they'll face a traditional welcoming ceremony before the crew splits up, with Shane Kimbrough returning on a NASA plane to the Johnson Space Center, and Ryzhikov and Borisenko boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for a flight back to Chkalovsky Airfield just outside of Star City on the outskirts of Moscow for their reunion with their families.
The performance of this step. The first step is complete. The parameters have been recorded. Vizir Prichal is done. So the row and root are secured in the neutral position, in the work position. We have some time. There is a change, with
10 minutes to the coming sense, the teams are polled.
So we were supposed to use the wide angle lens, but we will use narrow angle lens before and at the moment of the undocking. But as soon as the vehicle departs from the station, we will give you a command to use the wide angle lens again. All right, copy that.
Russian flight controllers instructing the crew aboard the Soyuz MS-02 vehicle regarding the use of cameras and the best camera settings as they photograph the International Space Station backing away from the station for the final time as they prepare for their departure and to move to a position well away from the station for the deorbit burn at 5:28 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time this morning. That will begin the ride home for that crew. Everything on the Soyuz is in excellent shape. The leak checks on the Sokol launch and entry suits were perfect. We have an airtight interface that will see the hooks opening before long, about 11 minutes away from the issuance of the command to open up the hooks that have held the Soyuz in place since October 21st. Once the hooks are open, springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another to enable the Soyuz to back away from the poised module for the final time. Once that undocking, at the moment of physical separation of the Soyuz from the International Space Station, Expedition 51 will begin officially even though Peggy Whitson took over command of the International Space Station yesterday in a Sunday morning ceremony with her crewmates. Whitson now in command of the station for the second time in her career, heading for a longer duration mission than originally had been planned, having been granted approval to stay on board the station for an extra 3 months until early September, when she will return home with Jack Fisher and Fyodor Yurchikhin, who are conducting final pre-launch preparations. Even today on landing day, they are down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan undergoing final pre-launch training for their liftoff on the Soyuz MS-04 vehicle. That launch scheduled on April the 20th. You see there Yurchikhin on the left, Jack Fisher of NASA on the right. They will join Whitson, Tomas Pesquet, and Oleg Novitsky after a 4-orbit, 6-hour rendezvous on April 20th. It will be Novitsky and Pesquet coming home on June 2nd as a 2-man crew to land just as these 3 crew members are soon to land today. Same procedures, same activities, same landing site. That will be coming up on June 2nd for the European Space Agency veteran Pesquet and Oleg Novitsky of the Russian Federal Space Agency. But the focus of attention today is on the upcoming undocking about 10 minutes from now of the Soyuz MS-02 from the International Space Station. So we'll be standing by for all of that as we bring you continuing coverage of the return home of Kimbrough, Borisenko, and Ryzhikov, the Expedition 50 crew.
Okay, so 1 minute and 16 have passed, and we do not have inaudible. Could you please repeat your last? We did not receive GSO-1 after 1 minute 16 seconds. All right, copy. Do you have indicator mode illuminated? Do you have maneuver illuminated? We have both. Yes, we confirm. So we, okay, let's proceed, and we will investigate here on the ground. Copy. We are sending S-17. The headlight activation, we confirm it is activated. Please send R8 command, so we will work with the narrow angle lens at first. All right, copy. We are ready to send R8. R8 is sent. So we confirm the transition to the narrow angle lens. Excellent. Would you please send R5, the AGC mode?
Just 7 minutes away from now, we'll have the issuance of the command to begin the process of opening the hooks that have held the Soyuz in place since October 21st. All systems in readiness. The polls have been taken by both the Russian flight controllers here in Korolyov and the NASA team of flight controllers at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Everybody is go for undocking and the departure of the Expedition 50 crew from the International Space Station.
Only after the factual undocking. So the fact that you did not receive it after 1 minute 16 is nominal. All right, copy Moscow. I checked the parameters. You are talking about S16? Yes, S16. Copy.
This is Mission Control Korolyov, about 3.5 minutes away now from the issuance of the command to begin the opening of the hooks holding the Soyuz MSO-2 to the Poisk module. Physical separation scheduled at 2:57 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time. We also should be passing within range of Russian ground stations momentarily, hopefully to be able to get views on both the Ku-band communication system as well as Russian ground stations of the departure of the Soyuz vehicle from the International Space Station. Down in Kazakhstan, the search and recovery forces will be boarding Russian Mi-8 helicopters a couple of hours from now to begin flying down from Zhezkazgan to the landing site about 89 miles to the southeast. The International Space Station currently flying over southwest China, moving from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator.
Moscow, there was a short LOS. How do you copy? We copy you loud and clear. 1 minute 20 until SSVP powering on. Yes, we confirm. We are receiving the image right now. Would you please expand the image on the commander?
This view that you're looking at is comparable to what they're seeing inside the Soyuz MSO-2. That box in the upper left-hand corner is the external black and white television camera that provides engineering data for the Russian flight controllers here in Korolyov. At the moment of physical separation that's coming up in about 2.5 minutes, you'll see the image of the International Space Station come into clearer view as the Soyuz backs away. This is the Soyuz MSO-2, strapped in their respective seats in the center section of the three-section Soyuz vehicle. Shane Kimbrough on the right, in the right seat is board engineer number 2. The Soyuz commander is Sergei Ryzhikov, flying under the call sign of Favora. And in the left seat is board engineer number 1, Andrei Borisenko, all suited up in their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits, ready for their ride home and a landing later today in the late afternoon in Kazakhstan.
Seconds.
10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 1, 2, 1. The command is sent.
The undocking command has been issued. Hooks are now confirmed to be driving. That confirmation coming from the visiting vehicle officer. Hooks now driving. It will be about a 90-second process, and then the springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another for physical separation. Expedition 50 will be on its way home. Expedition 51 will officially begin.
So we are standing by when the mechanical contact will be not illuminated, and then after that, in a short time, the real separation will begin. The crew is ready for the undocking. Great.
Когда начнется расстыковка, проконтролировать и борт-инженеру выбрать у себя команду на подключение широкого объектива и по нашему
Now, when the undocking starts, the flight
The hooks are almost fully open now, just a few seconds away from physical separation.
You will do this on our go. All right, copy.
We are ready to reset the statuses.
Mechanical contact is not illuminated. We have
physical separation confirmed right on time at 2:57 and 30 seconds Central Time. 2:57 and 30 seconds Central Time, 3:57 and 30 seconds Eastern Time. The Soyuz MSO-2 backing away from the International Space Station. Expedition 51 now officially underway on board the complex.
Yes. I'm ready to send the command. Copy.
We have selected the command. Position 20 uplinked. Successful.
Telemetry being uplinked to the Soyuz MSO-2 vehicle. The first of the separation burns is scheduled about a minute and a half from now at 3 a.m. Central Time. That will initiate a small opening rate. It's going to be an 8-second burn, about a half a meter per second opening rate. You can see the Soyuz as it slowly backs away from the Poisk module, the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station.
We see the whole docking interface right now on the monitor. No foreign objects there. Copy, por favor. So the interface surface is clean. In a minute and a half, stand by for... The range is about 10 meters. We are moving steadily.
Soyuz Commander Sergei Ryzhikov in the center seat of the descent module of the Soyuz MSO-2, providing updates for the Russian flight controllers here in Korolyov.
2 minutes after the indicator went off. Постцепка.
Давайте выдадим широкий объектив.
Выдаем. Выдам. Принято.
Okay.
Переход.
Да, наблюдаем.
You have a go to transition to wide angle. Wide angle lens. Copy that and done.
Есть работа ДПО.
We have depot activation. Yes, we are monitoring.
Отработали 8 секунд.
8 seconds burn.
Включение ДПО.
A good view of the engine firing on the Soyuz vehicle. An 8-second burn. This is the first of 2 separation burns to increase the opening rate by about a half a meter per second.
Good image. We don't have GSO 1.
Есть ГС обобщенная.
Now we have GSO 1, 2, and we are standing by for burn number 2. 11:01:50. Copy.
Осталось 30 секунд.
We have 30 seconds.
Срабатывает аварийное сообщение по превышению портального давления кислорода.
PPO2 message.
210 портальное давление.
210 принято.
210 PPO2. Copy. We have an increase. We have depot.
Standing by for the second of the 2 separation burns, the Soyuz flying 256 statute miles over the border between northeastern China and southeastern Russia.
And we are moving along the US West.
Наблюдаем за окончанием временного цикла. Принято. Работаем по 44-й странице.
And the visiting vehicle officer and mission control reports a good second separation burn. So the Soyuz is on its way. It will take about an orbit and 3/4 for it to reach its separation distance from the International Space Station for the Soyuz deorbit burn, which is a much more substantial firing of the engines. That will be a 4-minute, 38-second retrograde firing, a braking maneuver to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit for its descent back to Earth and a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan.
So you have right and I have left? Yes.
Выбран правый.
The right selected.
Выдаю Иван-1.
E1 command. Copy. Moscow, this is Favore. Go ahead.
У нас выбраны первый и второй коллектор.
We have manifold 1 and 2 selected.
Принято.
We copy.
Команда 11.
There's the Soyuz vehicle continuing to back away from the International Space Station. This crew of Shane Kimbrough, the Expedition 50 commander, and his crewmates, Andrei Borisenko, and Sergei Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander in the center seat of the descent module, soon to complete 173 days in space. They have just departed the station that was their home for 171 days. They'll be wrapping up a mission spanning 73.2 million statute miles.
D11 is not illuminated. Now D17, G17, and S11 not illuminated.
Переводим ВСК в положение ориент.
ВСК.
Понял вас, переводите.
To off.
Выдана команда.
And V18 command, yes, that is correct. And we have switching, and the light is off. And the translational hand controller is in a transit position.
Отлично, спасибо.
Пожалуйста. Контролируем параметры КДУ.
And we're monitoring the KDU parameters now. 172 for bottle 1.
Второй секции 173.
173 for number 2. Fuel 470, and we spent 10 kilograms. And Moscow, on your go, I can deactivate the TV. Yes, you can deactivate it, and you may issue the G4 command. Copy.
Flight controllers here at the Russian Mission Control Center very happy with all of the systems on the Soyuz MSO-2. Once again, the Soyuz undocked on time at 2:57 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time, 3:57 a.m. Eastern Time. Conducted 2 separation burns just a few minutes apart from one another to begin to back away to a safe distance from the International Space Station. Next up will be the deorbit burn that is scheduled at 5:28 a.m. Central Time, just about 2 hours and 20 minutes from now. That will begin the Soyuz's descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. A high-speed entry that will enable the crew to feel the first tug of gravity against their bodies for the initial time since their launch back on October 19th last year from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Once again, the crew is strapped in the center seat of the Soyuz, the descent module. That's the centermost section of the three-section Soyuz vehicle. The uppermost section, the orbital module, and the lowermost section, the instrumentation and propulsion module. The three sections will pyrotechnically separate just before the Soyuz enters the Earth's atmosphere. That separation of the modules will be about 27 minutes after the deorbit burn. The heat shield on the Soyuz will be exposed in the direction of travel to ablate the heat that will build up around the Soyuz of about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the crew enters the Earth's atmosphere and feels the tug of gravity against their bodies, they will enter into a plasma regime where they basically will be entering the Earth's atmosphere inside a fireball for a period of about 5 minutes or so, just before 6 a.m. Central Time. They'll emerge from that area of the plasma regime. They will jettison their heat shield. That will expose the altimeter. It's a cesium altimeter on the bottom of the Soyuz spacecraft that will sense its position and height, its altitude above the ground, so that all of its computer functions can then trigger the deployment of the parachutes. That parachute deployment will come in stages. The first activity for the parachute deployment about 15 minutes before touchdown will be 2 pilot parachutes first deployed, the second of which extracts a drogue chute. The drogue chute then will be released. It measures about 24 square meters, slowing the Soyuz down from a descent rate of 230 meters per second to just 80 meters per second. The main parachute is then released. It is a huge parachute covering an area of about 1,000 meters, slowing the Soyuz to a descent rate of 7.2 meters per second. The harness is first allowing the Soyuz to descend at an angle of about 30 degrees, expelling any residual heat around the spacecraft. Then it will shift the Soyuz to a straight vertical descent. Touchdown on the steppe of Kazakhstan, some 89 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan, is scheduled at 6:21 and 5 seconds a.m. Central Time. That will be 5:21 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, 2 hours, 34 minutes before sunset. The weather at the landing site is ideal. Just a few clouds at 2,800 feet. Winds very light out of the southeast, about 10 knots. The temperatures that will greet Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko will be in the mid-60s Fahrenheit. A gorgeous spring day for the return home of Expedition 50.
Well, I think we can have a rest right now. Yes.
Можно немножко расслабить привязную. Ключевые. Можно пояснуть чуть-чуть?
I'm going to loosen the strap, the shoulder strap. I'd like you to move the GPC start time to 11:50 after the COM reconfig. As soon as the COM reconfig is complete, then we'll do our GPC.
This is Mission Control Korolyov. Once again, the Soyuz MSO-2 undocked on time at 2:57 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time this morning, has begun to back away at a consistent rate to a safe distance away from the International Space Station. Next major milestone will be the deorbit burn. That will be a 4-minute, 38-second braking maneuver where the engines will fire to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second. The deorbit burn is scheduled at 5:28 a.m. Central Time, 6:28 a.m. Eastern Time. With that in mind, we'll be back on the air at 5 a.m. Central Time, a little less than 2 hours from now, with all of our deorbit burn and landing coverage through the time that the crew is brought into the medical tent at the landing site in south central Kazakhstan. Again, we'll be back on the air at 5 Central, 6 Eastern, with our deorbit and landing coverage to bring home Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko after 173 days in space. So until then, thanks for joining us. We'll see you shortly, about an hour and 45 minutes from now. Until then, this is Mission Control Korolyov.